Did somebody say, we have a MLB slate tonight? Somebody cue that music. It's that time again, where full-time DFS pros give you what you need to succeed. It doesn't matter if you're shooting for a GPP takedown or trying to build your bankroll by hitting in cash. We've got you covered. No BS, just DFS. Welcome to On the RotoRadar with your host, Brittingham T and Two Minds Bluff.
Welcome to the Tuesday edition of On the RotoRadar, where we give you our game-by-game analysis of every MLB slate Monday through Friday. I'm your co-host, Two Minds Bluff.
And I'm Britt T, here with you to help analyze today's monster 15-game slate. I'll be handling the cash game portion of tonight's slate. Bluff will help you with the GPP aspects. No time to waste. As I mentioned, we've got 15 games. We're going to jump right into it. Our very first matchup of the day, we have the Pittsburgh Pirates and Ivan Nova going to Baltimore to take on the Orioles and Kevin Gausman. The Orioles are minus 130 favorites. The run total is 9. We're in Camden Yards, a hitter's park. Do you have any plays from this game, Bluff?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some people talk about Nova on DraftKings just because he's really cheap. I don't really see it at all. I don't like the spot. Gausman, I will be watching for the Pirates lineup just to kind of see what it is, but very little interest in the pitching here. As far as hitting, I don't have any interest in any of the Pirates bats versus Gausman, except for maybe Adam Frazier, but his price is up to the point where it doesn't really interest me much. Against Nova, I don't mind attacking him with the two big lefties, Seth Smith and Chris Davis, but that's about it for me in this game.
Cash game wise, I've got nothing. Nothing is popping out in this matchup. I want to attack Gausman. It's a good park to attack him in, but he's a guy that you want to attack with right-hand bats. And the Pirates, there's no one that I want to, at their price, put in there. I don't. Josh Harrison's dealing with an injury. He would be a guy I would consider, but a 15-game slate, anybody that's dealing with an injury, I'm just going to pass. Andrew McCutchen has been hitting 6th, and he's still not discounted enough to fully take advantage. So if somebody happens to make the top of the lineup that's a right-handed bat, maybe you punt there, but that's it. There's nobody in this game for cash that I want to attack.
Yeah, and I'll say, I mean, Gausman's been better. Yeah, I was just going to briefly mention, Gausman's been a little better. He's getting a lot more first pitch strikes and not walking as many guys as he was there for a bit. He's still giving up the hard contact and not showing enough soft contact that we'd want to see that we saw from him last year. But I think he's starting to turn a corner there, so it really kind of backs me off of wanting to target him tonight.
Yeah, and there's just going to be better spots because we've got such a big slate. So moving on, this game I've been excited to talk to you about because it could go one of two ways in cash. I'm curious to get the GPP side, but we have the Boston Red Sox and Drew Pomeranz going to New York to take on the Yankees and Masahiro Tanaka. The Yankees are minus 117 favorites. It's a 9-run total. We're in Yankee Stadium. It's a great hitter's park with 2 serviceable pitchers, but I'm guessing there's quite a few GPP plays from this spot. What do you got?
Yeah, for me, no interest in the pitching in Yankee Stadium. Just a tough environment to pitch, even though there is a wind blowing in and it is going to be colder there today, so that does limit the hitting a bit. As far as the hitting, Tanaka keeps getting crushed on his fastball. These Red Sox don't strike out at all. Tanaka showed some amazing stuff in that start versus the A's and then got lit up in his last start. So I have no problem, kind of looking at these Red Sox. My favorite ones would be to default to the lefties again here. Just Tanaka has always struggled giving up power to lefties, and Yankee Stadium is made for left-hand power. Benintendi, had a couple of home runs on Sunday. He's showing some power upside. He was struggling there for a while, just looked a little lost to the plate, but he's definitely in play. But I guess my go-to on the Red Sox would be Mitch Moreland, which kind of pains me to say as he's when I tried to punt to him at first base all year, it hasn't worked out, but the stats that I look at still show that he's always a fine play, and he has been hitting the ball lots of warning track, and he could easily hit a couple of shots in Yankee Stadium tonight. And also, Jackie Bradley is priced up on both sides, but still a good play for me. Again, I liked attacking Tanaka with left-handed power, especially when he's pitching in Yankee Stadium. As far as the Yankees against Pomeranz, who will probably pitch 5 or 6 innings in the bullpen, they're all priced up, pretty efficiently, and I just really don't have any interest in these hitters in this spot. How about you?
Well, here's the thing with cash games. Right off the bat, on FanDuel, you're going to run into Andrew Benintendi all over the place because he's still only $2,800 on FanDuel. They didn't bump his price. He had been in a slump, and he got out of it in a huge way on Sunday, where he had 3 hits, 2 home runs, a stolen base, a walk, 3 RBIs, just a monster 50-point performance. So he's going to be super popular. He matches up well with the platoon in this hitter's park for lefties. Benintendi is nearly a must-play at 2,800 on FanDuel. On DraftKings, it's a lot harder to fit in because it's 4,100. So I don't think you'll see him as much there, but be prepared on FanDuel, Andrew Benintendi. Now, Yankees are always super popular, especially in cash games. Gary Sanchez always has high ownership at the catcher position because he always has a good hitting spot in the order, and he's got the power to hit home runs, and he has an RBI upside. He'll be in some matchups. People won't be afraid of Pomeranz in this park. So you might see him, and you might see some Matt Holliday, who is still fairly priced on FanDuel at $3,400. And on DraftKings, he also comes in at a decent price of $40. Whoa, never mind, they bumped his price.
Yeah, all the Yankees are really bumped up on DraftKings.
That's interesting.
They bumped the whole team up.
I thought he was still $3,900, but they bumped
I don't
him
know
all
why.
up to $47.
Yeah, I don't know why. The Gardner's 4.8, Hicks is 4.7, Judge is 5.4. They just bumped the whole top of the order up. Not really sure why, but it is
so
what it is.
These are Yankees bats on FanDuel or more in play. You're not touching them at that price on DraftKings. That's all I've got from this game, though. Benintendi is the guy that you will see a lot of, and I will try to get into my lineups because it's just a price per dollar play. It's a great spot on FanDuel for cash games.
Yep, agree with you on FanDuel. That's way too cheap for him in this spot.
Yep, because he's been hitting second. They moved him up. Anything else?
That should do it.
Our next matchup, we have the St. Louis Cardinals and Adam Wainwright in Cincinnati to take on the Reds and Tim Edelman. The Cardinals are minus 120 favorites. The run total is 9.5. We're in Great American, another hitter's park. Plays from this game.
No interest in the pitching, obviously. Another good spot for Matt Carpenter, which caused me to laugh. He's super cheap on DraftKings still, and Edelman.
It's laughable.
He's
going to be.
I don't know.
3,700.
It doesn't make any sense to me. To me, Matt Carpenter is one of the best hitters in baseball, one of the most consistent hitters in baseball, except for this year. He's been in a slump here he's doing nothing at the plate. He doesn't look. Do you have any explanations? He kind of looks lost. He keeps getting great matchups every day, and he keeps doing nothing.
It's just one of those things where he's gonna at 3,700, even if he bombs for you, especially on DraftKings. He scored 3 fantasy points yesterday. He had 1 hit. The game before, he scored 4 fantasy points on DraftKings. He had a run and a walk. At 3,700, that's still playable because we know his upside. In cash games on DraftKings, if you fade Matt Carpenter at 3,700 in Great American against a middling righty, you're taking a risk because, the spot, like you were saying, it's just a great spot. The Cardinals are, they've got a run projection that's, let me make sure I get this right. Yeah, they got a 4.62 run projection, so nothing to be scared of there. Edelman is nothing to be afraid of. He's given up a fly ball rate of 49% while only striking out 14%. Carpenter still has a 361 WOBA and a 221 ISO against right-handed pitching. He's just a play that you lock and load in cash games on DraftKings, and you figure out the rest, really. I mean, it just doesn't make sense that they haven't bumped his price up. On FanDuel, he's easier to get away from just because he's coming in at, well, I was going to say there's one play I like at his price point, but he's still only 3,100 on FanDuel, too. So I could see some people playing there, but there's a better play at this exact price point. But other Cardinals, you have any interest in them against Edelman?
I have some interest in Fowler, but Edelman has actually been somewhat serviceable versus right-handers this year. I don't really believe in that too much, but the Cardinals just haven't shown me a whole lot, and on a 15-game slate, that I think a lot of people might actually go to them just because I think a lot of people will just target Edelman just because of name value alone. But he's been actually pretty decent versus right-hand pitching, so I have very limited interest in anyone outside of Carpenter and then in Fowler, but much more interest in Carpenter than anyone in the Cardinals. As far as the Reds, Wainwright somehow worked some magic in his last start and had a beauty. I think it was a 6 innings, no run start. I have no problem with basically this entire Reds lineup. For me, I think is well in play. Schebler should be back today. I like him a lot. I like Billy Hamilton batting leadoff here, and then also Zach Cozart at shortstop is priced up super high in DraftKings. He's gonna be super low owned, and I think he matches up quite well with Wainwright. What are you seeing?
I'm not running into any builds I put together. The Reds just aren't making it. They just Votto's fine, but there's better plays at his price point. Billy Hamilton's fine, but he got gunned down by Yadier Molina yesterday, and that's always been a thing. Does Billy Hamilton own Yadier Molina? We know for sure he'll at least test him, so it's a possibility that he's got stolen base upside, but I never like targeting Yadier. But that's it. I mean, Zach Cozart is fine at if you can afford him, but I don't think you can afford him today. So cash games, I don't think you're going to see hardly any Reds ownership.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. They are priced up quite a bit, and yeah, I mean the stolen base upside for Billy is limited quite a bit. I think my favorite two Reds would be Schebler and Cozart, but it's definitely a spot where I don't have a ton of interest, but they're on the edge for me, and if I end up there, I wouldn't be wrong with it.
Well, and that's one more play or a couple more plays I want to touch on here. Scooter Gennett, if Schebler's still out, Gennett's been hitting fifth or sixth based on where they slot him in today. He's min price on FanDuel. You could do worse for a punt if you really need salary saver.
I like him on FanDuel Scooter on FanDuel. I played him yesterday and had a decent game, and just I'm a Scooter guy. I think at 2K versus a righty, I would play. I'm fine playing Scooter versus almost any righty at min price on FanDuel.
Well, let me ask you this about last play from this game, Jed Jericho at third base. The third base options are pretty tough today in cash games because Nolan Arenado is priced through the roof. Chris Bryant is priced way up there. Jericho's making some lineups that I put together. The matchup on paper is really good. I don't know if you have any recent data from Edelman, but on the season he's given up a hard hit rate of 35.7% and a fly ball rate of 36%. The thing that worries me is Edelman is striking out 25% of right-handed batters.
Yeah, I mean he's been very effective versus right-hand batters too. Let me pull up his last 30 versus right-hand batters.
I don't like targeting guys that are that high of strikeout rate to the handedness of the batter.
Yeah, me too.
I want the ball to be put in play in cash. So maybe Jericho is a thing. Maybe he's not. Just if you fit your build, Jericho is decent. He's hitting cleanup in Great American.
Yeah, and you love the park. And, Adelman still, he has been giving up quite a bit of hard contact to righties and not limiting soft contact even in the last 30, but he still has somehow been effective. He's actually on the season, he has a 3.55 xFIP versus right-hand batters, which is something that concerns me a little bit. But again, xFIP is park adjusted, so you have a spot here in Great American that kind of limits some of that, so... Definitely in play, Judd.
All right, moving on to our next game. We have the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim and Jesse Chavez going into Detroit to take on the Tigers and Daniel Norris. The Tigers are large favorites here at minus 150. The run total is 9. Again, we're in another favorable park for hitting with potential challenges. I like a lot of spots against Jesse Chavez. How about you?
Yeah, Chavez is the guy I like to target, but I like to target him a little more with left-handed bats. But he does have pretty neutral splits, so I'm fine with this lineup is going to be pretty much all right-hand except for Avila will probably bat 2 like he has been versus right-hand pitching.
Romine will be hitting leadoff, and he's got the platoon.
And Tiger Stadium, I wouldn't say it's a great park to hit, especially it's the wind's gonna be blowing out some there, but it is still cold there. And in good conditions, it's an average park. It's pretty much right around right around the 15 number for if you're ranking parks by hitter rankings. So I mean Chavez, he's a guy that can limit damage. He's not a very good pitcher. He just kind of survives. So I do, like obviously Miguel Cabrera and JD Martinez, who are hitting the ball super hard lately and look kind of like they're completely locked in. It'll be interesting to see where Nicky at third base bats for the Tigers today. I'm guessing
against righties, he's been hitting in that 7th spot, which is he's unplayable in cash.
It's weird that they bat him there. Because he actually hits righties better his whole career, so it's kind of, I don't know. I think he's been the guy that, in my opinion, has been just very unlucky all year. Every metric shows that he's hitting the ball hard, seeing the ball well, and things are going to come around for him. But yeah, at 7th, that makes him a lot harder to play. As far as the Angels, maybe just see what the lineup looks like, because if it is it's tough to really tell what they're going to roll out without Trout, and they have some other injuries. And if it is a lineup that offers some strikeout upside to left-hand pitching, I will have some interest in Daniel Norris, who I'm a believer in, especially versus a Angels team without Trout in a cold weather stadium at 6.7K on DraftKings. I will be in consideration for me for GPPs, depending on what the lineup is the Angels roll out.
Well, for cash games, it's pretty simple. Tigers have been popular. They've been just piling on runs lately, and people have taken notice, and they just get rostered all the time in cash. Starting off the top, Andrew Romine, as I mentioned, he will be hitting leadoff. They hit him leadoff against the right-handers. He comes in at a discount because he's platoon price, so he's 2.6K on FanDuel, and on DraftKings, he had second base and outfield eligibility, and he's only 3.3K. So you will see Andrew Romine all over the place. The big ones like Miggy Cabrera, first base eligible, he is always in play. He's got a decent price on DraftKings at $4,400. On FanDuel, it's 4K, which is okay. But you won't see much of him on FanDuel, but on DraftKings I can see it. But the outfielders of JD Martinez and Justin Upton have been super popular because they both have home run upside. Justin Upton has got stolen base upside. They're pricey, and I don't like targeting guys at 5th or 6th, but you will see them in cash games. Now, Alex Avila is going to be your premier cash game catching play. He's 3K on FanDuel, and on DraftKings, he is a very affordable.
He's a 3.4. Yeah, 3.4.
Yep, 3,400. So it's a spot where you're going to see Avila all over the place. Anytime he's in there against a righty, they bat him second. It's just an ideal spot. And if you're choosing a catcher, that's the same price as basically a punt outfielder. So you're getting a guy that's going to give you upside for not only home runs, but RBIs and runs scored. Because the Tigers have a healthy projected total here. It's 4.79, which is opened as the 4th highest.
Yeah, you always have to love Avila if he's batting 2 versus a righty. I mean, tough to find a better catcher play than that. There is worth.
I was just gonna say, here's the thing on catchers. there's always going to be those guys that come out that are 2K or 2.4K that you're either going to go there in cash games, or this is the guy you're playing because he's fair priced in a great spot. So just keep in mind, those are your two options in cash. Avila or punt is basically the play today.
Yeah, and I just worth noting, I believe Ian Kinsler is eligible to come off the DL today, so he might be back in the lineup.
That might shake things up, so that might take Romine out, so pay attention to that. Anything else from this spot?
That should do it.
All right, our next matchup, we have the Chicago White Sox and Jose Quintana going into Tampa Bay to take on the Tampa Bay Rays and Chris Archer. In this game, the Rays are minus 170 favorites. This is tied for the lowest run total of the day at 7.5. We're in Tropicana, a very favorable pitcher's park. I know Chris Archer is on top of my list. How about you?
Yeah, I don't really think there's even much that needs to be said. Archer at home versus a right-handed heavy White Sox lineup that strikes out quite a bit. He is my number one projected pitcher, not even worrying about price. I have him projected to outscore every other pitcher on the slate. You just love the matchup. You love the park. He's always been much better at home, which makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense too in this park, and this park really downgrades this White Sox lineup too because it is kind of built on power. It's not really a slapstick lineup,
and so yep. That's the only way they're really going to hurt you.
Yeah, and the park really limits their power output. I do have a little interest in Quintana. The Rays lineup is already out, and it's a bad lineup for Quintana. You got Souza batting leadoff, and you have Weeks in there, which is good for the strikeout upside, but then you have Robertson and Jesus catching today, so not a whole lot of interest there at 8.2K. This Rays team does strike out quite a bit, but they do hit left-hand pitching well enough, and Quintana just doesn't offer you that huge strikeout upside even against teams that strike out a lot. That I don't have a ton of interest in the spot, but he's definitely on the fringe. I wish he was a little cheaper on DraftKings. For hitters, no interest in any of the White Sox hitters. Little interest in Souza batting leadoff, and that's about
so
it.
So pricey now.
He's only 4.3 on DraftKings. So
on FanDuel, they shot him way up there. He's 3.8K. That's so much for. At least he got the lineup bump today, so he's a great play if you can afford him.
Yeah, he's been hitting the ball really, really hard, and he looks really locked into the plate. So at 4.3K in a spot where I really don't think he'll have much ownership at all, especially on DraftKings, and even less ownership on FanDuel, as that high threes is expensive outfielder on FanDuel. So he'll be low owned, batting leadoff, probably gonna get 5 at bats. Makes a definitely interesting DraftKings or GPP play.
And let's talk about the specifics of Quintana here. He's got a big name, but he's not been good this year. 2 right-handed bats, he's allowing a 360 WOBA. He's given up a hard hit rate of 29.9%, which is respectable, but his fly ball rate is 40%. That's a place where you want to attack. I wish the ballpark were better, but Souza and even Evan Longoria are going to be popular if you can afford them.
It's worth noting that Souza does hit righties much better than lefties, actually, and he doesn't show a whole lot of power versus left-hand pitching, which is kind of scary. But again, Quintana does give up that big fly ball rate and kind of exactly the type of pitcher you want versus Souza. So,
and I know you went over it a bit here, but just to put it as bluntly as I can, in cash games, you lock in Chris Archer on both sides. That's just your number one play. He's a huge favorite in Vegas. He's only 10.7K on FanDuel, and on DraftKings, he's only 10.6K, which is just a silly price for his upside today. He's got a 29% strikeout rate on the season. The White Sox against right-handed pitching have been a thing all year long. They have the overall lowest projected team total today at 3.40 runs, and they strike out 23.2% of the time to right-handed pitching. That's 6th highest out of the entire league. So you pencil in Archer, you figure out the rest on pitching. It's just you're going to see him everywhere. Do not fade Chris Archer in cash games, regardless of the outcome. Chris Archer is the guy.
Agreed.
Anything else from this spot?
Let's move on.
All right, Philadelphia Phillies is our next game with Aaron Nola going into Atlanta to take on the Braves and Jaime Garcia. The Braves are minus 110 favorites. The run total is 8.5. We saw an offensive explosion last night despite the weather concerns, which there was none, which is super tilting. But again, that's just part of the daily day struggle. How about today? What do you got?
Yeah, Aaron Nola is only 6K on DraftKings, and you don't love attacking this Braves team with any sort of pitching just because they are a pesky team and it doesn't offer you a huge strikeout upside. But Aaron Nola at 6K versus a Braves lineup that isn't super scary. I mean, it's very competent, but he definitely is drawing some GPP interest, and he definitely will be a guy that I will be watching when the Braves lineup comes out to go matchup by matchup just to see how much I like him. But he is definitely one of my guys on my list to look at for DraftKings as a SP2. As far as hitting, obviously I don't have any interest in Garcia, who's actually more expensive than Nola for some reason. But as far as hitting, I don't mind going back to these Phillies. They've shown a decent propensity to hit against left-hand pitching. You have Joseph, you have Altier, who showed some life yesterday finally. He's always hit lefties much better. Joseph's always hit lefties much better. Garcia can give up fly balls to right-hand pitching. It's exactly kind of the guy you want against Tommy Joseph. And again, Franco, who did nothing yesterday. And I had him all my Philly stacks. I had Franco, and it kind of limited my upside. But he's still been hitting the ball hard all year, and eventually I think stuff is going to start falling for him, and he's going to. It doesn't make any sense. At some point, stuff's going to start working for him. He's hitting the ball hard. He's just hitting it right at people. And you like him versus lefties. He has less strikeout numbers versus left-hand pitching, so that's kind of the big worry with him, is that he can struggle versus righties that throw a decent slider. For the Braves, the only hitter I really would have interest in, I guess there's two. It's the same as yesterday for me. It's Adams and Ender.
Yep.
Ender, Nola can walk guys, so Ender can get on base and steal, and then you have Matt Adams, who has just been crushing in Atlanta. The stadium fits him well, and Nola can give up plenty of power to left-hand bats. How about you?
People have caught on that this is a hitter's paradise so far from just it's incredible. I don't know specifically why it's playing so well to hitters, but lots of runs are getting scored at SunTrust. So people are tuned into this. And guys like Ender Inciarte, who's going to be hitting leadoff, and Matt Adams are going to be popular in cash because they've been doing well lately. And it's just a spot that it's just a middling matchup, but it's a good park. They've been doing well lately. They've got a name. So be prepared to run into Inciarte in the outfield, and Matt Adams at first base is still cheap. As far as the Phillies go, after last night where they put a bunch of runs, people are going to be tuned into them. Altair is going to be a popular play if you can afford him. They've been slotting him in at the hitting second or third. Him or Howie Kendrick are both going to be in play in the outfield for me today.
Yeah, they're all super cheap on DraftKings. Garcia is a guy that is not the type of pitcher I like to stack against, just because he doesn't usually give up those big innings a lot of the time. But he's definitely a guy I look for one-offs for, especially righty power. So I won't be probably stacking.
Altair is 3.4K on DraftKings.
Yeah, everyone. Caesar's the most expensive on DraftKings at 3.7. Then everyone else is 3.6, 3.4. So they're very cheap. Joseph's 3.2 at first. So yeah, I think in cash games you're right. They'll probably be pretty popular as some nice savings.
They'll be popular. It's a matchup that's not overly scary. There's nothing crazy to fear, and they've got a name just because they've put up some runs lately. Be prepared for that.
Yeah, and it's something if it becomes more apparent as I listen to what's going on around the industry for everyone else. If the Phillies are going to be pretty popular, it's a spot for me that I would probably just fade them, as I just don't love attacking Garcia with a whole lot of, like I said, I don't like stacking against him. And he can dodge these home runs. He can get the fly balls, keep in the park, kind of like Ian Kennedy was able to do versus the Astros last night. And if they're going to be 20-30% ownership, which they really might, even on this big slate, just because a lot of people are going to be paying up for pitching, and their pricing so cheap, they might be very, very popular in GPP. So definitely might be a fade spot for me.
And the Phillies got a 4.19 run total, and the Braves got a 4.31 run total. So it's right in the middle. Nothing is jumping out. So just keep your eyes and ears peeled when the lineups come out, and there may be at least a few one-off plays and cash games that you can plug in here with the platoon spots. Our next spot is a very attackable game. We have the San Francisco Giants and Matt Cain in Milwaukee to take on the Brewers and Chase Anderson. Milwaukee is a minus 124 favorite. The run total is 9. I like a lot of hitters in this game. How about you?
Yeah, for me, Chase is not a guy I like to attack, so I really don't like any of the Giants hitters. For Milwaukee, I like pretty much the entire lineup. It'll be interesting to see what they put out today, but Eric Thames batting 2 or 3 is going to be a great spot versus Cain.
He's going to be a monster ownership today. Matt Cain is a very hittable pitcher. Thames is hitting second in Milwaukee. He's cheap on FanDuel. He's 3.2K. Expect to face Eric Thames on FanDuel.
Yeah. And then on DraftKings, he's priced up at 4.9, but they added outfield to him today. So he's first base and outfield eligible, which will bump his ownership up quite a bit. But it is a very great spot for him. The
specific statistics on this. Matt Cain's allowing a 339 WOBA to left-handed bats, hard hit rate of 32%, fly ball rate of 30%. He's striking out only 13%. So your left-handed bats, Eric Thames is going to be super popular, and I don't know if you're on this guy, but I've loved watching him at bat. Eric Sogard has been hitting leadoff, and the dude just doesn't make an out. He's so hard to put out. He's got a 484 WOBA this season against right-handed pitching. What are your thoughts on Eric Sogard hitting leadoff at shortstop? He's cheap and doesn't get out.
Yeah, no, he battles with the bats. I'll give him that. But versus Cain, you don't mind anyone, especially when they're coming from the left side. What is his price on DraftKings with that?
He's got second base. He's got second base and shortstop eligibility on DraftKings, and he's 3.3K. So you can fill in one of your spots, one of the difficult spots at second base or shortstop with a 3.3K guy hitting leadoff. On FanDuel is 2.8K, which is just another lock and load spot. The Brewers have a very high implied run total at 4.68. It's just a great spot, especially on FanDuel. You get that little mini stack of Sogard, Thames hitting 1 and 2 against Cain in this park. It's a great play in cash.
Yeah, no, I agree. Definitely in cash. For GBPs, I wouldn't fault anyone from going there, and I think he's a good play. I do think, especially on DraftKings where he has double position eligibility, he's going to be pretty popular, especially at his price relief point. And it's kind of the guy where, I know he's been hitting well, but to me, he still doesn't profile as, an amazing DFS, especially GPP player where I'm looking for guys to really, blow the lid off their ceilings. He's just a guy that if I end up there and I need someone to fill a position, I'm fine playing him and just, hopefully it gets my, 8 to 10 DraftKings points.
Well, let me bring up some of the Giants hitters here because they've been really popular lately in cash because they've all been really cheap. Specifically, Brandon Crawford at shortstop. He's been cheap. He's kind of been better lately. Chase Anderson on paper is allowing a 41% hard hit rate and a fly ball rate of 45% to left-handed bats this year. It's a good spot on paper for Crawford. Denard Span hitting leadoff. And Brandon Belt has been very popular in DraftKings cash games because he has first base and outfield eligibility. And so a lot of people have been playing Brandon Belt in the outfield because he's hitting third in front of Posey. He's a talented hitter. He gets on base, and he's got that mid-tier price for a guy with such home run upside. He's got 10 on the year. It's a great park. What do you think about? You don't have any interest in the giant lefties?
I don't. Chase, he's been pretty split neutral this year. In the past, and it kind of makes sense with his pitch mix that he, has definite reverse splits. He's a guy that I don't really ever roster left-hand pitching against, especially when he's at home. He's one of those guys that you can't really explain, but he's always been much better in Milwaukee. And it's just not a spot that I have a ton of interest. I feel like the Giants are, all priced pretty accurately, especially on DraftKings. If Crawford was still in the low threes, I'd have a lot of interest on DraftKings, but he's up to 4.2, and there's other spots I'd rather go. Yeah, well, maybe not that either, but
for cash games for me, I love Sogard too.
I just don't see. I mean, I think the Giants, score 3-4 runs today. Maybe they get a couple off the bullpen, but I just don't see on a 15-game slate. It just isn't popping for me as a spot that I want to get guys from.
Well, let's go to this next game. Bluff and I were talking prior to starting the recording here, and this is going to be a fun one to talk about. We have the New York Mets and Jacob deGrom going into Texas to take on the Rangers and Dylan G. The Mets are minus 133 favorites. It's a 9.5 run total. We're in Rangers ballpark. I don't have any interest in Jacob deGrom, but Bluff, I think you really like him today. Tell me about Jacob deGrom.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely one of the top three pitchers. We obviously love targeting this Rangers team with pitchers that have high strikeout upside just because they're a completely free-swinging bunch. Now, it has been downgraded some with Beltry back in the lineup, but still, this lineup likes to strike out a ton, and if deGrom can bring his good stuff, I mean, he can easily rack up 10 to 15 strikeouts against this lineup, and that's not even going crazy. I mean, this is the type of guy that strikes out double digits versus difficult matchups versus like the Nationals and whatnot. And you don't love this the park shift. He will have to face a DH today, which does downgrade him some. It's also it's going to be 90 degrees in Texas today, or I think around game time, and there is a bit of a breeze blowing up. But I don't think that really changes anything in Arlington. I think the wind is pretty much completely offset just by where the stadium and how it's located.
Well, let me. I'll tell you this much. If you play Jacob deGrom GPP, he can be gold today because he will be not owned at all in cash games or by the general player. Just the the DFS player that doesn't dig in. He will not play Jacob deGrom today. He is priced right in between Chris Archer and Robbie Ray. You can pay up to get Scherzer. You can pay down to get James Paxton. Jacob deGrom will have just no ownership from the cash game side of things. He's got tremendous. I mean, he's got the strikeout upside, but that's why I was so curious to talk to you about him. He's not on the radar at all for me.
Yeah, I think you might be right for cash games, but like on DraftKings at the higher buy-in stuff, I think he'll be very popular. He'll be just like he'll be like Samardzija yesterday, was like 50-60% owned in the higher buy-in stuff. DeGrom's not going to be anywhere close to that, but I think he's going to be 25-30%. It's been a pretty common theme, especially in higher buy-in stuff on DraftKings, that you just pitch whoever is against the Rangers if they have strikeout abilities, no matter if it's at home or away. And
Yep, for those of you listening, that's the sharp take, and that's why I said I was very interested to talk about it, and I will be following that ownership and his performance tonight. It's fascinating for me to hear your take on that. I'm excited to see it in action.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what the ownership percentage is, but for me in high stakes, just like today there's a big 444 on DraftKings 100K for first. I think Max Scherzer is going to be fairly low owned. I think the field's going to probably pivot away from him and his spot. And I think, Archer's going to be by far the chalkiest pitcher. He'll probably be 50%, maybe 50 to 60%. But I would guess deGrom will be up there a bit. Now, his ownership will be down some just because since everyone's going to Archer and there are a lot of good hitting spots, there will be a lot of people that want to pair Archer with a cheaper pitcher so they can pay up for hitting. So, but I still think the Groom will be fairly popular.
Well, let's talk about the other side of this ball game and some very, very popular cash game plays. Facing off against Dylan G. Right off the top, I want to talk about Michael Conforto. He's going to be hitting leadoff, platoon advantage. We're getting a major park upgrade. G in 2000. This is his 2017, his starting pitching debut. He's pitched 2.2 innings, left-handed bats as a reliever this year. But last year, as a starter, he allowed a 357 WOBA to left-handed bats with 10 home runs and 59 innings. Hard hit rate of 31%, fly ball rate of 27%. But the thing that I like most about G from last year is he only struck out 14% while walking 9%. So that puts into play Michael Conforto, Jay Bruce in the outfield, Neil Walker at second base is a great play, hitting cleanup. And if you get Asdrubal Cabrera or Jose Reyes at that third base or shortstop hitting second, they will also be popular cash game plays. But I have a feeling you're going to see at least one Mets player in every cash game build, if not two. Your thoughts on the Mets?
Yeah, I think the Mets should score a ton of runs tonight. You're going to throw up a whole bunch of lefties versus Dylan Gee, who, he's struggled versus both sides of the plate, but even quite more so left-hand pitching his whole career. You have a great hitting environment here. We said we're worried about the hitting environment for the Groom, so that just means we really love it for hitters against Gee. I just think he's going to get crushed. He's not going to pitch very deep. You're going to get into that Texas bullpen that is still struggling. They have some guys that have kind of come alive at the end of it, but you're going to get the scrubs in today, and they are going to be serving up hits. And yeah, I think the Mets are going to be probably a top stack for me, if not the number one stack. There's pretty much everything. I mean, Conforto, you obviously just love. You get Jay Bruce in a park that can, with good weather, can give up the left-hand power. You really love him. I mean, Neil Walker, Lucas Duda makes for a great first base play.
Oh yeah, I didn't even mention Duda. Duda, he's still cheap and hitting fifth.
Yeah, he's priced. The whole Mets team is priced up on DraftKings. He's up to 4.9 on DraftKings, which is a fair price for the situation. And actually, it's probably good just because that will kind of limit his ownership some. If he was in the low fours, he'd be probably a pretty super high play.
Yeah, look at this. On FanDuel, he's 2.9K. Yeah. On DraftKings, he's 4.9K. Yeah, if you have played DFS long enough, you know that DraftKings adjusts pricing based on matchup. That should tell you something about his viability on FanDuel. Lucas Duda is a great play at first base today.
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough team to get away from, and it's a tough team to think. There doesn't seem to be a lot of ways for them to fail. I mean, Gee is a guy that, to me, I've never really seen him limit damage. He doesn't have a monster fly ball rate. He can induce some ground ball, can induce. I think he's like a 50. He's in the 50s ground ball. I think his career. And so far this year.
Important to note, he's making a spot start here. He's not a normal rotation guy.
Yeah. So I mean, you might see him get through the first time through without a lot, but yeah, it's just it sets up for a big game for the Mets for me.
All right, moving on. We have it's a good slate today. Another game I'm excited to talk about: the Miami Marlins and Jeff Locke going into Chicago, taking on the Cubs and Jake Arrieta. The Cubs are minus 200 favorites. The run total is only 7.5 here in Wrigley. I think it should be higher. What are you seeing in this game?
Yeah, I mean, the wind's blowing in again, and it's cold, so I think it kind of makes sense for me. For me, I have no interest in the pitching, no interest in the hitting. There's better spots for hitters, and the pitching, Arrieta at 9K on DraftKings, just no interest. Locke at 5.4. He just doesn't do it for me. I know he pitched a great game, showed a lot of strikeouts.
Yeah, I want to talk about Jeff Locke for a second.
Yeah, go for it.
He's a lefty, and traditionally he's been not good. He's been a guy that you hit, but of course pitchers get better over time. And I don't know if it was just a thing against the Diamondbacks, but he was strong against the Diamondbacks, went 5.2 innings, struck out 7, only gave up 3 hits and 1 earned run. But going into Wrigley to face the Cubs, and anytime a lefty is facing the Cubs, I just want to plug in Chris Bryant. So as far as Locke, is there something different about him this year? Because last year he allowed a 372 WOBA to right-handed bats on a hard hit rate of 34%, fly ball rate of 31%, and only struck out 12%. So what do you think about Chris Bryant in this spot?
Yeah, I'm fine with them, but on a slate like this, I just don't love attacking a cold, wind blowing in Wrigley. It just kind of limits the upside for me. I know Bryant hit one out yesterday, but the weather is actually worse today. So just
Interesting.
no interest for me.
I'll need to check the weather some more. I mean, we've kind of buried the lead on this whole slate. It is a Coors slate, and we'll get to that game. It's our 2 games away. But Chris Bryant will be popular in cash games facing a left-handed pitcher in Wrigley. So as far as Jake Arrieta and Miami bats, you're not going to roster them in cash, and you won't see them in cash. They're just a weird price point for the spot. So don't expect any of Jake Arrieta or Miami bats. Anything else from the spot?
No, good for me.
Okay, now this game, I don't know a lot about the pitching, and I'm hoping you have some insight. We have the Houston Astros pitching David Paulino, and the Kansas City Royals are pitching Jake Junis. The Astros are monsterly hot. Is it 12 games in a row they've won? They're minus 140 favorites here, 9.5 run total. It's a high run total for Kauffman Stadium. Paulino versus Junis, both AAA guys. Do you know anything about these two pitchers, first of all?
Yeah, I don't know a ton, but I kind of looked into their minor league stats this morning, and I'm not seeing a whole lot from Paulino. He's only been throwing 60, 70, 80 pitches in AAA. He's only had 3 starts in AAA. I'm guessing he must have been hurt to start the year. But, it just looks like an average strikeout guy. He seems like he has some control problems. He's not getting hit huge, but not, he just looks like a, really below average MLB starter that won't be around for a while. He's probably, I'm guessing just making a spot start here. But with that said, I don't believe Davinsky pitched yesterday, or did he?
I don't think they had to use him.
I should double check quick because I was fairly certain. Let me pull up the box real quick.
While you look that up, bottom line here is Royals batters. Yesterday, Bluff nailed Jorge Bonifacio, and when he got that lineup bump, I plugged him into all my cash games because he was facing off against Fires in a home run upside spot, and he came through. Today, I just don't, on 15-game slate, there's no Royals hitter. Paulino is a righty, so I don't want to target Whit Merrifield. I don't want to target Bonifacio. Moustakas was moved down in the order. Lorenzo Cain, Salvador Perez, Eric Hosmer. None of those guys are cash game building blocks today, so you won't run into any of them. That's why I was curious about Paulino, if maybe he was an SP2 option in cash games, because I assumed he was super cheap. But
no, I don't think he's very good, and I wouldn't mind these Royals versus him if he was going to pitch for a while, but I really think we're going to see maybe 3-4 innings out of Paulino, and then Davinsky didn't pitch yesterday, didn't pitch the day before. He is going to be coming in. He's probably going to be throwing 3, a full 3 innings, maybe even 4 innings if stuff goes nuts. And Davinsky's not a guy you want any hitters versus. So I just have no interest in Kansas City of any of these hitters just because they used none of their good bullpen yesterday. So they're ready. I'm guessing Paulino, I could honestly see him throw 3 decent innings and still get yanked for Davinsky. I think that's just the plan they have. Is going to go Paulino, Davinsky, and then they'll reevaluate in the 7th and 8th inning to who they're going to go with. And if it's anywhere close to a game, you're going to see all their top bullpen arms, which are all very elite. So no interest in any of the Kansas City Royals for me. Junis is a odd guy. Looked like in 2016
he's a big time prospect.
Yeah, in 2016 he was terrible, absolutely terrible in the minors. But in 2017 he's been elite. Huge strikeout numbers, limited damage. Had shown some control, but against this Astros team, you couldn't pick a worse spot for a guy to pitch against. So no interest in Junis for me. It does, for me, take away some of the interest in the Astros. I'm not really going there at the moment. They're all priced up again, just like they were yesterday. I don't think it's a great matchup for them by any means, especially these guys are all going to be seeing for the first time, which can lead to struggles. and just tough park. There's a lot of other good hitting spots today. No reason for me. So for me, I have, it's a very long-winded answer, but no interest in the pitching, no interest in the hitting. How about you?
No interest across the board here. Astros are going to be popular in cash games just because they're arguably the best team in baseball right now. But Jake Junis is a high-valued prospect. You mentioned his AAA numbers in Omaha. He's got a 2.34 ERA with a 0.97 WHIP. That's super impressive to go along with the 57-8 strikeout to walk ratio. So he's got stuff. Whether it translates to the majors, we will, find out. And of course, this is such a bad spot against the Astros, but if you can afford them, plug in an Astro, but I don't see how you're getting up to Springer's price or Altuve or those guys. They're just so outrageously priced because they've scored so many runs.
Yeah, for me, it's gonna be a full Astros fade. I just no interest in the spot. I'd rather go elsewhere.
Well, let's get to the game of the day. That always the Coors game. We have the Cleveland Indians and Mike Clevenger going into Colorado to take on Antonio Senzatella. The Indians are only minus 105 favorites. The run total is 11, the highest of the day. We're in Coors Field. Tell me about your plays from Coors.
Yeah, for me, the weather in Coors doesn't seem to be ideal. It looks like there's some rain and stuff. I don't think there's any postponement worries or whatever, but I think it kind of downs the environment in Coors. It's not going to be very warm there. It's going to be in the 60s from what I'm seeing. But still, both these pitchers are the type of pitchers that should struggle in Coors Field in the thin air more just because it limits movement, especially Clevenger. I think he's another guy that should struggle. He depends on some late moving his pitches, some just his off-beat stuff needs to locate to be effective, and that's going to be tough for him to do in Colorado when it's just not moving like it normally does. So I think he's going to get hit super hard.
Well, and let me interject here because this is just dumb. I don't understand DraftKings. Carlos Gonzalez, who should be hitting cleanup or worse fifth today, is 3.8K on DraftKings.
Yeah,
3.8K.
Yeah, that's
Charlie Blackmon is of course the guy you want, and he's priced up 5.6K on DraftKings. And on FanDuel, he's 4.9. But 3.8K for Carlos Gonzalez in Coors Field against a righty. Cash games, hit that lock button.
There's either a typo there or just something got missed in the algo because I'm guessing maybe should have been 4.8K is what it was meant to be, which it does suck.
Well, okay.
Because he's going to be super popular, and he's still even at a super popular rate, it's going to be tough to fade him just because it's a great spot in my opinion because the strikeout upside from Clevenger isn't there and should be there in Coors, so I think Cargill should be able to tee off on him.
Well, look at this. On the other side of the teams here, Jason Kipnis is only 4.6K hitting leadoff. It just seems like he should be priced higher for hitting leadoff in Coors as the away team with the platoon advantage. There's nothing that jumps out about the matchup against Senzatella, except Senzatella doesn't strike out a lot of hitters. So he's been getting by on ground balls, but the ball's going to be put in play in Coors. He's not overly expensive. On FanDuel, they priced him up a little more, but I've got interest in every hitter 1 through 5 for both teams in this spot.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, Senzatella's a guy that, he's been getting almost no soft contact either, so I mean, I've been it's tough for me to even talk about this because I have, PTSD almost with Coors lately just because they've been kind of lower owned this year than a lot of spots, and I don't always go to it, but I go to it versus pitchers that I think are going to struggle in the thin air. That's mostly pitchers that rely on off speed or breaking pitches, like like Adam Wainwright, who is the prototypical pitcher that should be god awful in Coors, like should have just no chance. And he threw a shutout. But I think in the same situation here, I think both these pitchers are just fit the mold of pitchers you want to target in Coors. And, especially the Indians, they're priced up on DraftKings, but they're not priced up, where they should be. They should be, maybe another 10% more expensive. And so, yeah, I love, you got to love Kipnis, got to love Lindor, you got to love Brantley, Santana, Edwin, Jose. You got to love Jan Gomes at 3.5K, Bradley Zimmer batting in front of the pitcher. I'm assuming he'll bat eighth. You still, don't mind him at all. I mean, there should be a ton of runs scored in this game. I'd be curious to see what the ownership is. 15 game slate. People still kind of still flock to Coors. The weather isn't as great as normal, and Coors just hasn't shown a lot so far this year. So I think some people will probably maybe stay away, which kind of has been the case lately, which makes it more appealing to me because it's I think an extreme great spot. And it's going to be under-owned if the trends continue.
Yeah, last thing I'll say, the Indians have the highest run projected total at 5.52 runs. The Rockies are right below them at the second highest at 5.48 runs. So Vegas is telling us there's going to be runs scored. Of course, Coors is going to be popular with the average cash game build. If you can afford Coors bats, you plug them in. Carlos Gonzalez on DraftKings, you just click the lock button and you build around. Our next game, we have the San Diego Padres and a pitcher I've rostered both starts this year, Dinelson Lamet, going into Arizona to take on the Diamondbacks and Robbie Ray. The Diamondbacks are monster favorites at minus 200. The run total is 8.5. We're in a hitter's park. But I have got tons of interest in Robbie Ray. How about you?
Yeah, I don't have. I mean, you love the spot for him. Even in Chase against the Padres, and Ray has dominated the Padres. I believe in almost every start he's ever had in his career. This lineup offers a ton of K upside to him, but still, the price, especially on draft, he's 10K on FanDuel, 12. He's 11.9 on DraftKings, so basically 12K. It's an expensive price in a spot where I expect the Padres to be able to score a few runs anyway, and I just don't see him having a monster game. Or at least he can have a monster game, but there's a lot of ways for him not to, and I'm just not afraid to just fade him. I have no clue how popular he'll be in GPPs, just because I think that price, he might be very low owned, just because that price kind of takes him out, especially on DraftKings. I think people want to go.
Yeah,
go for it.
Let's talk about the specifics here. On FanDuel and DraftKings, he's clearly behind Chris Archer in terms of ballpark and matchup and price point. But I could see him being an SP1 for some people because he is a huge favorite. He is at home. He is striking out 30% of batters this year. And he faced this Padres team May 20th. And he went 7.2 innings, struck out 6, allowed 0 runs, only walked 3, and gave up 2 total hits. Now, I say only walk 3 because that used to be the thing about Robbie Ray, is he was a high strikeout guy, but he also got pitch counts really high and didn't last long because he walked a lot of batters. But he has 0 walks allowed his last 2 games, his last 2 starts. He went 9 innings, struck out 10 in Pittsburgh with 0 walks. He went 7 innings, struck out 9 with 0 walks in Milwaukee the game before that. So he's coming off his 2 best starts of the year. If he doesn't walk batters and get into trouble that way, I don't see how the Padres get to him. Padres strike out 22.7% of the time left-handed pitching. It's just a spot where I don't like the ballpark. He's been significantly worse at home. But Robbie Ray is going to be popular.
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of ways the Padres can get to him. I mean, Robbie Ray, he's been elite his last how many ever starts. I mean, he absolutely dominated the Pirates and threw his first ever complete game shutout his last time out of his career. But still, I mean, he can struggle with right-hand power. And, you have Will Myers, you have Hunter Renfroe, you have Austin Hedges, who get, a nice park, in Chase. It's going to be probably the best hitting weather of any park with Coors, not having the greatest temperatures in the world that you'd want to see. I mean, so this is definitely probably the best hitting environment that we'll see on the slate. And you have a guy that's going to face 6 of the 8 hitters are going to be right-handed, if not more. And there's a lot of power there, and there's a lot of ways for him to fail, especially at a super high price. There's just really no interest for me in tournaments. But
Well, let's talk about the flip side here. I'm not Robbie Ray's not making a lot of my builds just because his price. Chris Archer is just a far superior play on paper. But let's talk about the flip side and Denelson Lamet. You mentioned this is maybe the best hitting park on the whole slate if the weather and coolers isn't ideal. Lamet has gone five. He's pitched 2 starts this season in the pros. He's a super prospect. He's gone 5 innings in both starts. They were tough matchups on paper against the Cubs and the Mets. He struck out 8 in both games. I like Lamet. I like watching him pitch. Do you have any interest in Denisel Lamet?
yeah, I mean, I think he's probably my favorite cheap pitcher today. The Diamondbacks the lineup has been kind of sputtering a bit, especially, they're missing Pollock still, and he really was a key to that lineup in the early part of the season. And since he's been out these last couple of weeks, they really have, they've sputtered and they just haven't shown. And this team is a team that strikes out a ton, especially versus right-hand pitching. And so they offer that huge K upside. He's probably only going to see 3 or 4 left-hand. I mean, he's going to have Blanco, Peralta, Lamb, and then maybe they have Herman in there. I'm not sure who for sure catches Ray normally, if that's going to be a concern, if it will be Ionetta. But especially if Herman's out, I mean, there's a lot of Ks in this lineup. He's only 6.8 on DraftKings. You obviously don't love the park shift, the hitting weather. But right now, outside of Goldschmidt and Lamb, this whole team is just not hitting the ball well at all. And the strikeout numbers are been way up, even over when they always were high. I mean, they're super high in the last couple of weeks. So you have to love Lamet here at a reduced price. But
and here's my caveat: be careful because Vegas says the Diamondbacks are going to score 5.02 runs. So put into that stock what you will. I like Lamet as a pitcher. I don't want anything to do with either side of the bats here, but I'm interested in Lamet, and I'm glad that you kind of backed up my thoughts on him because I think he's a big time. He will have a big future in this league.
I think let's move on.
Anything else from?
I think that should do it. Yeah.
Okay. All right, our next game, we have the Toronto Blue Jays and Marco Estrada going into Oakland, take on the Athletics and Jesse Hahn. The Blue Jays are minus 130 favorites. Run total is 8. We're in O.co. I've got no interest in either pitcher. Do you?
Yeah, I have some interest in Estrada. I think this lineup matches up really well for his talents, and I think there's a lot of strikeouts to be had. He's going to get to see, a nice even split of righty-lefties, which I kind of like with Estrada because he has way better K numbers versus lefties. A little more effective getting righties out, and then he's a fly ball pitcher that's going to love this park shift to go to Oakland, where it's very tough to hit the ball out, especially at night, especially when it's cooler day, and I believe it's going to be cooler out in the West Coast tonight. So I think I wish he was a little bit cheaper. He's 9.2K in DraftKings, but I think he's in a great spot to have a very effective start and could flash that 30+ point upside with a team that is, a lineup that should just be built for him to rack up a ton of strikeouts. For the Blue Jays, I don't mind grabbing most of these hitters. There's Jesse Hahn, who I don't have a ton of respect for, but I really would rather go with the left-hand bats. You got Smokey Morales, but still, the park is not what you want to attack hitters in. It's a 15-game slate. There's a lot of better spots. And the Blue Jays that I have the main interest in are all first basemen, which is a tough position. So you won't see a lot of any hitters in my lineups in this, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do with Marco at this point. But I do have a lot of interest, and it's definitely going to be interesting to see what lineup the A's put out tonight.
Cash game wise, you're not going to see Estrada or Hahn in any of your spots, and you're not going to see any of the hitters. But Jed Lowry on FanDuel has been popular because they just don't raise his price. He's 2.4K over there at second base. So a lot of people have been punting Lowry because he's been hitting second or third. So you may run into Jed Lowry, but everywhere else, just the ballpark, it's a pass-over game for cash.
Yeah, and I don't like the spot for Lowry at all, so he's a definite fade on FanDuel.
I don't either, but he's been popular just because of his price point.
Yeah, he's way too cheap over there.
Our next game has my favorite SP2 on the day. We have the Minnesota Twins and Hector Santiago going into Seattle to take on James Paxton. Seattle is the largest favorite of the day at minus 210. It's a run total of 8.5. I love James Paxton. I want to talk a little bit about him, and then I'll get your thoughts. Paxton's the overall biggest favorite of the slate. He's striking out 30% of batters. This is his second start after coming off the DL. He's 4-0 on the season with a 1.26 ERA. He's only allowing a 2.18 WOBA to right-handed bats. That's over 36 innings, and he'll see a lot of right-handed bats today, and he's been great against them. The Twins have the second lowest projected team total, 3.42 runs. They strike out only 19.8% of the time, which isn't great, but everything about outside of the strikeout rate, and I think he will get the strikeouts because he does have a 30% rate himself and a 14% swinging strike rate. I love James Paxton. He's too cheap on DraftKings at 8.8K. I've got him locked in since the slate opened. Tell me I'm correct in liking James Paxton.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said this a lot of times, but James Paxton is by far my favorite pitcher in all of baseball. I love watching him pitch. I think I picked him in my season-long, like 5 or 6 rounds ahead of the average draft rank, just because I was not going to take the risk of not getting him. I think I've said this many times in my articles that he is going to win several Cy Youngs in the AL. He's going to be, your top pitcher, and I do like the spot for him. I mean, the Twins team versus left-hand pitching hasn't struck out as much as you would expect it to have, especially last year, where they were much more free-swinging bunch. They have cut that down a little bit. They've been a little more patient, but, Paxton has that stuff, especially, like you said, he's going to face a lot of right-hand bats. The Twins have a lot of switch hitters that are going to hit from the right-hand side, which is actually great because Paxton has always been tougher on right-hand bats, and he has a much higher strikeout upside. It's on the year right now, it's about 32% to 23% in favor of right-hand bats for strikeouts. So there should be
and let's not bury the lead here in cash and GPP. On DraftKings, he's 8.8K. That's significantly cheaper than the big guns that are in the 10.9 and up range, and he's the largest favorite of the day. It just doesn't make sense in cash games on DraftKings today to not go Archer Paxton.
Yeah, and what I was getting to is there is some downside, there is some risk here. I love Paxton, but like I said, this Twins team has been a little more patient, and they have been able to this offense has been clicking. This team, has been playing well. They've been able to score runs versus almost any type of pitcher, which take what you will. I don't put a whole lot of weight into that. But my biggest concern is this Twins team can run up pitch counts. They can do some damage. And Paxton is only a second start of the DL. He, you heard how high I am on him long term. I think the Mariners are in the same position where they're in big on him long term. And he has had injury problems. I still think they're going to be very, very careful with him. And I don't think he'll be, fully unleashed today. So I'm only expecting him to get 80 to 90 pitches, which, probably 5, maybe 6 innings if you're lucky. So it does really limit his upside. And, I think that 8.8K on pricing on DraftKings, especially, is a fair price. It's much lower than what he would be if he was 100% and, you were going to get the 100, 110 pitches that they normally let him throw. But I do think they're going to be very careful. And I do see some ways that this Twins lineup can, limit the Ks and score a few runs off him. And if you're only getting 5 innings out of a guy and you don't get, the 6-7 Ks in those 5 innings and only allowing, 1 run max, he comes pretty worthless for you in GPPs. You'd rather just even, find some of these 6K guys that can match that or even outdo it and, get even more savings.
Yeah, you've sold me on the GPP fade side of things. For cash games, I just think it's getting too cute to go against the overall biggest favorite. He may only pitch 5 to 6 innings. He went 5.1 in his last 2 starts, but he had 6 Ks in both of those, and he still got you all the value you need fantasy point wise for DraftKings. That again, it's a fade at your own risk in cash games proposition, but I understand the concerns with him in GPP.
Yeah, I'll just say I think the last start he got through 5 innings with like 68 pitches, came out for the 6th, walked a guy, and immediately they yanked him. And had no
Yep.
no issue. Actually, he must have been a hit. He didn't walk anyone last there, but it was must have been just a single, and they immediately yanked him. They said didn't want him to have to deal with guys on base in the sixth. They just kind of let him out in the sixth to see if he could throw 1, 2, 3 inning, and I think it's going to be probably the same approach again. This guy's the franchise future. I mean, the success of the Mariners relies on keeping him healthy for the next 5 to 10 years. If they can lock him up, so I think they're going to be super careful with him. And if the Twins hit him and stuff, he might get yanked in the fourth or fifth. It's definitely a high risk spot of him having a short start.
Well, let's talk about the hitters against. You don't want to take anyone against Paxton, but against Hector Santiago and the Twins here. Santiago is a lefty who's shown reverse splits. How are you approaching attacking Hector Santiago, or are you not interested in any bats in Seattle?
No, I have a lot of interest in the bats. Hector Santiago is a guy that I can't figure out a ton. Before this year, I always loved to attack him with right-hand power, and that always worked. But this year, he is just getting absolutely demolished by left-hand pitching. And I know they've switched up they've done a lot of stuff to try to make him more effective, and I don't know if that's what's leading to this. I don't have a big explanation for it, but like you look in 2016, he gave up 26 homers to right-hand bats, compared to 7. It was about a 4. So if you adjust it for the innings, it's about 26 to 20. So not a huge spread, but still, he gave up a lot more power to right-hand bats. This year, it's kind of been the exact opposite, and this Mariners team is kind of built to hit off left-hand pitching that struggles with left-hand bats. So I think they have an opportunity to have a monster game for Santiago here. I'm not always a guy that always says, "Oh, you got to play Nelson Cruz versus a lefty," like a lot of people do. But I think this spot's a great spot for Nelson Cruz. And on a 15-game slate, he might not be as high play as you normally see him versus a lefty. But I also, I like Robinson Cano and Kyle Seager. I like Taylor Motter here. I think it's a good spot for him. A righty that relies on power and big hits versus Hector Santiago that, he hasn't shown as much this year, but in the past, this has really given it up to right-handed power more than anything else. Mike Zunino, Hector Santiago isn't striking out righties. He's only has 17 Clippers righties. Zunino at catcher, I like his spot. He's got the power you want to see versus him. And then even like Ben Gamble, who should be able to hit Santiago, fairly hard, just like every lefty's been. So I kind of like this Mariners lineup up and down. They'll kind of be one of my favorite stacks of the day.
Well, here's the thing. You're going to see people that just plug in Nelson Cruz anytime he faces a lefty, so don't be shocked if you see that in cash. He's priced way up there today. So my builds haven't been getting him in, but I could see it in cash games for some people. The guy I think will be extremely popular in cash games is going to be Guillermo Heredia. He will be hitting leadoff because Gene Segura is still on the disabled list, and they've been batting him first or second, flipping with Ben Gamble based on the platoon advantage. Whoever has it.
Yeah, see, that's kind of where I agree. That's kind of where I'm curious what they'll do. I could see him hitting Gamble leadoff just because of how hard Santiago's been getting hit by lefties, but they might just go with the norm and bat Heredia leadoff. So it'll be interesting.
And I've got interest in cash games, and whichever one hits leadoff, maybe even both of them, because they're extremely cheap. 3K, 2.8K on FanDuel, DraftKings 3.5 and 3.2K. So you will run into a lot of lineups with at least one of those guys. Wow. Because they fit so well cash game wise.
Yeah, not to interject, but the Reds line just came out and Schebler's out of it again, so Scooter is batting 5th today. Really like that spot on FanDuel. That'll be my second baseman.
Hitting 5th at min price on FanDuel. That is a very nice play we mentioned earlier. All right, our last game of the slate, 15 games. It's a monster matchup. We have the Washington Nationals and Max Scherzer in Los Angeles taking on the Dodgers and Brandon McCarthy. Washington, this is probably the lowest you'll ever see Max Scherzer. He's only a minus 105 favorite. The run total is 7.5. We talked a little prior to stream. You think Max Scherzer is a trap tonight. I sort of agree. Talk to me about Max Scherzer.
Yeah, I don't even know if he's a trap. I just don't think any sharp players are going to play him. He's just struggled the last 2-3 years versus left-hand pitching. He's a below average pitcher versus left-hand bats, and you're going to see 6 to 7 of them in this Dodgers lineup today, and they all have power except for maybe Adrian Gonzalez, who doesn't have much power anymore. And that's exactly the kind of hitters you don't want Max to face, is left-hand bats with a lot of power. I mean, you just look at his numbers from this year. He has a 45% K rate versus right-hand pitching with a 1.77 xFIP, and then versus lefties, he's got a 23% K, 23K percentage and a 4.82 xFIP versus left. I mean, that's about the extreme splits you could ever see. He's priced up like a normal matchup, and I just don't see any reason to play him here. I don't see the K's really there for him either, and I think he's going to get hit decently and give up plenty of runs. Personally, I have a ton of interest on DraftKings at Corey Seager at only 3,400. Should be batting 2 today. I think a great spot for him to hit a homer, do more, steal base. I mean, it's just a perfect matchup. And Corey Seager will be my favorite shortstop by far on the slate. I think he's going to be kind of popular too. I guess I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what the field really does. But yeah, I have zero interest in Max Scherzer, and on the other side, I don't have any interest in pitching McCarthy just because he's probably gonna have a very short outing, just they're the normal Dodgers way, and he's at 7.8K on DraftKings doesn't make a lot of sense. But I don't want to really attack with any hitters, especially when I expect him only to pitch 5 innings. And like we've said before, you get in that Dodgers bullpen, it's just a pain, and especially on a 15-game slate. I just would rather go elsewhere with my hitting. So I have no interest in the hitting for the Nationals. I don't want Max. I don't want McCarthy. I do have a lot of interest in like Corey Seager. I do have some interest in like Cody Bellinger, Yasmani Grandal's 3K catcher on DraftKings, another guy that has some interest for me. What are you thinking?
I have no interest on the main slate for any of these guys on either team, either pitcher. It just doesn't make sense. The Nationals have a 3.78 projected run total. Dodgers 3.72. I'm just not. It's not enticing enough. Corey Seager at his price point on DraftKings is interesting. Scherzer, you do attack with lefties that can hit home runs. He's allowed a 307 WOBA with 6 home runs, left-handed bats. So I could see Seager or Bellinger or even Grandal getting to him with a solo shot or something. The only reason I brought up Scherzer, and I wrote him up in my article today, is a lot of our members play the late night slate only. They're going to have a choice between Max Scherzer or James Paxton. What way would you lean there if you had to pick between those two on that small slate? Are you still siding with Scherzer or Paxton over Scherzer?
So are we looking? Is it a 4 game? Is the Diamondbacks game included in that, or is it just the 3 late games?
I'm not sure, but let's throw Robbie Ray in there. So would you pick Robbie Ray, James Paxton, or Max Scherzer as your starting pitcher 1 on FanDuel?
I would pick Marco Estrada.
Wow. There you go. For those of you listening that play the late night slate, that's your GPP play. For me in cash games, I would build around the bats, and then whichever pitcher fit your leftover money, I would play Paxton and then Ray in that order. And if Scherzer fits, you can mess with that.
Yeah, I think I would go Estrada, Paxton. I'd get a lot of Mariners, and then have like a Seager Grandal in there would kind of be how my roster build would go.
So that sums up our slate. Quickly to recap on cash game side of things, expect to play Chris Archer in all your contests, FanDuel and DraftKings. Starting pitcher 2, I love James Paxton. I could see a couple of spots where you pay down or pay up because there are bats you want. I like all of the Coors bats just based on what order you get them in and how much money you have left. I'm targeting the Indians left-handed bats first, the Rockies right-handed bats first. The Diamondbacks are an interesting spot against Lamet. I don't know. They have such a high projected run total, but you will see them in cash games. And, of course, the Tigers and the Mets are my favorite teams outside of Coors. How about GPP? Sum it up.
Yeah, I think Chris Archer is going to be super chalk in GPPs, but it's such an elite spot. It's he's too cheap. He should be 12.5 on DraftKings, not 10.6. So even with 56%, going to be a tough fade for me because he just has the perfect matchup where it just almost like Samardzija was yesterday, where I kind of figured he'd probably be 40% plus on DraftKings, but just has that lead upside that you just can't fade him because he's more higher than 6% chance that he's going to throw a game that if you don't have him, you're going to be pretty tough to find those points elsewhere. I do have some interest in DeGrom at should be a reduced ownership, I think, just because everyone's going to go to Archer and they're going to maybe want to pair him with a cheap guy. As far as cheap guys now, it's always tough when I play cheap guys. It's tough to really say it now because I want to see the lineups. I want to analyze each individual matchup and the K matchups. But for me right now, the cheap guys that are my biggest interest are Lamet from the Padres, Daniel Norris at home versus the Angels, and Aaron Nola in Atlanta. As far as stacks go, my favorite teams for runs are going to be the Mariners are definitely one of them. I do like the Brewers to score a lot of runs. The Mets by far, the number one for me today. I think they are going to should be a favorite to score the most runs, even more than the Coors teams. And then after the Mets, it is going to be both Coors sides. I think there's going to be a lot of runs in Coors. And then, like I said, I wish Marco on the slate, it's tough. He doesn't really fit my roster bills right now, but I do think Marco Estrada's in a great spot to have a very big game. I'm talking 30-plus points on DraftKings tonight. And that should pretty much wrap up my thoughts on the slate. You got anything else before we do our draft?
No, that's it. It was a huge slate. Let's get to the player draft. I think I got you last night.
You did.
The guy who I faded in cash games because of the stupid weather, but I was high on all day. Odubel Herrera went nutso.
So maybe, I don't know, like Twitter was going wild. I feel bad. Like Kevin Roth was just getting attacked by random people, which just doesn't make any sense because like the two other guys I follow both, Roth I think had it at 60-40 to play. The other guy had it at 70-30 to play. And when they posted their radar shots and stuff, like I didn't pay much attention after 6:10 because I looked at their radar shots right before lock, and to me it looked like the game, was 90-10. It was gonna play. So I don't know. Was there an update between 6:10 and 6:30 that kind of showed some rain coming in?
There wasn't, and I talked to quite a few members last night, and the general rule in cash games is you just pivot and you don't take the risk. I agree
completely. There was definitely enough risk, especially with how much it had rained, that there'd be field problems and,
But GPP, I don't know how people didn't just stack that game up. It was the best game by far, and there's a potential that it plays. If you have the bankroll, I just would have locked and loaded that game.
Yeah, and you want to hear, this is a bad beat story, but I love the Phillies. I stacked them in a few lineups. I faded Alfier, which really held them back. But one of the biggest reasons I didn't play the Phillies is because I thought the weather was so clear that everyone was going to play the Phillies. Yeah. I thought they were going to be one of the highest owned teams on the slate because they were so cheap on DraftKings. Then no one played them. I was bewildered. I didn't know what was going on. But no, I agree with you. For cash games, it's definitely a spot where I would probably just would have went off.
You just go to the next slate.
There's no point to risk the zeros. But for GPPs, I thought like Saunders and Harrow were going to be on DraftKings 30-40% owned at 2,900. So I don't know. I made a huge mistake. I should have just got off all my Cardinals and just got Tommy Joseph in there and instead of Carpenter and just piled on those Phillies. So it was a frustrating night for me.
Lesson learned for everyone that went through that for the first time. It's weather sucks sometimes, and sometimes you make good judgment calls. Sometimes you make bad ones based on it. But don't yell at Roth on Twitter. That's stupid.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I like the weather aspect of baseball. It kind of adds a little more fun, a little more risk, a little more tilt level to it. But it is what it is. Anyway, let's get to our draft. I think
you got first.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is the loser will get to pick first the next day. Is how we'll work it. So you won. It was 38-28. You had 30 from Hera, which really carried your team there. I had Bonifacio at 17 and Pham with 11. Rizzo put up a 0. You had Carp and Adams get you 3 and 5. So 38-28, you're up to 4 and 1. Absolutely bloodbath me at the moment. My first pick is going to be Nolan Arenado. I think he's going to mash maybe 1 or 2 homers tonight.
I want Michael Conforto in Texas hitting leadoff against Dylan G. I love Conforto. I'm going to give him everything I can to give him in lineups. My second pick, I'm going to go with, he's got first base and outfield eligibility now. He will be in most of my lineups. I'm going with Eric Thames hitting second against Matt Cain in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I love both those picks. Both guys should have monster games, and that's kind of how the slate is there's a lot of high priced guys that I think are in great spots. For my second pick here, I'll take one more high priced guy. I'm gonna go with Francisco Lindor. I'm gonna get my Coors exposure in so I can watch that game go to 2.
Did you like today's show? Did you find this information to be helpful? Give us a shout out on any social media platform, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Of course, don't forget to use the hashtag RotoRadarMLB in your post. Every time you use that hashtag, you'll get a ticket to our $20,000 raffle in July. You heard that right. $20,000. We appreciate every single one of you for being RotoRadar members. On the RotoRadar will be available for members only Monday to Friday for the remainder of the MLB season. As always, good night and good skill. For more information on our raffles, head over to our website, www.rotoradar.net.